everybody, it's Paul here at Gillette Castle State Park. Today I'm standing on the third floor of the castle. I'm in a little hallway that's between the art gallery and the in-law apartment suite, and I'm surrounded by photos, advertisements, playbills from William Gillette's career in the theater. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to delve deeply into his professional life. So something people are always curious about: when did William Gillette decide he was going to be an actor? He knew even from a very early age that he wanted to work in the theater. He always had an inclination to become an actor. Even when he was a kid, William Gillette would put on puppet shows in his parents' carriage house. He and his friends from the neighborhood would put on these shows. He built the puppet stage, he designed the set. He even wrote the actual scripts for the puppet shows. So he knew pretty early on that there was no doubt he was going to go into the theater. Now, back then, theater wasn't really seen as a prestigious profession. A lot of the higher class societies looked down on actors, thinking that actors were immoral people, that they were working in a very lowbrow type of art form. So you can imagine that when William Gillette told his family he wanted to go into the theater, that they weren't exactly thrilled. Now, that being said, they were still supportive of him. His father is the one who drove him to the train station so he could start his career on the road. Now, keep in mind that by this point, William Gillette had already lost two brothers. One died of tuberculosis, the other one died after a Civil War battle. And so when William Gillette's father dropped him off at the train station, he said something along the lines of, "I've already brought two sons to this train station only for them to never return. I trust that you'll be the exception." So he definitely had support of his father. Even early on, William Gillette traveled a lot through the Midwest and through the Gulf Coast. He was doing stock acting. He was doing apprenticeships in the theater where he was making literally no money. So his father actually provided him an allowance to live off of. His first moderate success was a play that he wrote and played in called The Professor. That was around 1881. And then later that year he wrote another play called Esmeralda, which was an even bigger success. And then the hits just kept on coming. About 1884, he came out with a play called The Private Secretary. That was another huge success. And then he started going into the realm of Civil War dramas. He wrote two Civil War plays. The first one was in 1886 called Held by the Enemy. The second one was called Secret Service. That was in 1895. And they were very notable because they were critically acclaimed. William Gillette was writing these plays just a couple decades after the Civil War had ended. He had the plays where the hero was from the North, but the plays took place in the South. But he made sure that he could portray both sides in a very fair and very humane light, and that made them popular all over the country and the world. In fact, Secret Service became his most successful production. He performed in Secret Service 1,700 times, which is more than any other play he did. A little known fact is that there was a televised version of the play that was done for a TV special in 1977, and that actually marked the dramatic screen debut for who was at that point a little known actress by the name of Meryl Streep. So William Gillette had himself very well established by the late 1880s, early 1890s, and he just kept on going from there. Now, let's talk about the character that people most associate Gillette with, and that would be Sherlock Holmes. Now, Arthur Conan Doyle wrote the Sherlock Holmes novels, so it's Doyle who created the character in the stories. He actually was growing tired of Sherlock Holmes as a character, so Doyle killed Sherlock off. But then a few years later, he realized that he needed some money to build his new estate, so he decided to write a play adaptation, so he brought Sherlock Holmes back. Now, he was shopping around looking for the right actors and managers for the Sherlock Holmes, but he couldn't really find anyone who was willing to take it on without completely deconstructing what Doyle had done. He finally got in contact with a producer named Charles Frohman, who was William Gillette's manager, and he's the one that recommended that Gillette do it. At first, Gillette was a little bit hesitant. He thought that Sherlock Holmes was a rather impossible character, but he still went with it anyway, and he did have some liberties to rewrite the play. So he took elements from 4 of the stories, plus he added in his own characters, his own plot lines. At one point, he wired Doyle to ask if he could marry Sherlock Holmes off. which is something that had never been done before. Sherlock Holmes never really fell in love before. And Doyle's response was, you may marry him, you may murder him, you can do what you will with him. He really didn't mind either way. There's another story that William Gillette, after the play was written, went to go visit Arthur Conan Doyle in England. Gillette got off the train, Doyle met him there. Gillette had the deer stalker, he had his magnifying glass. He went right up to Doyle and said something along the lines of, unquestionably an author. So that got a chuckle out of Doyle. It sort of broke the ice for them, and they became good friends from there. Now, October of 1899, Gillette first portrayed Sherlock Holmes. That was in Buffalo, New York. And he spent about 33 years doing about 1,300 shows all over the world. He's the one that really popularized that portrayal of Sherlock Holmes. So he was the one who created a lot of elements that we associate with a character, or at least popularized them. So for example, the deerstalker cap was never really mentioned in the novels. The illustrator, Sidney Paget, included the deerstalker in some of the illustrations in the stories, but Gillette took that, he made it popular. In the stories, Sherlock Holmes had a straight pipe, which wasn't the easiest thing to hold while you're performing, so William Gillette went with a bent pipe. The magnifying glass was something Gillette came up with. Originally, Sherlock had a pocket lens, but William Gillette figured that people in the audience couldn't see something as small as a pocket lens, so he went with the magnifying glass. Even elementary, my dear Watson, one of the most well-known phrases in our popular culture, came out of something William Gillette did. The phrase was never in the novels. Now, elementary was on its own in the stories, as was my dear Watson, but they were far apart from each other. William Gillette coined the phrase elementary, my dear fellow, and then over time that evolved into what we know today. So between 1899 and 1932, William Gillette did about 1,300 performances of Sherlock Holmes. And then in the 1930s, he did some radio plays as Sherlock Holmes as well. In 1916, he actually took the script that he wrote for the play, and he worked with SNA Productions out of Chicago and did a 2-hour silent movie. It was gone and lost until about 2014. At that point, it was found at a film warehouse in France. They found it, they restored it. It originally premiered in France in 2015, then they brought it over to San Francisco. It premiered at a silent film festival there, and then in the fall of 2015, we brought it right here to the park, and the Friends of Gillette Castle Estate Park did a multi-weekend film premiere here as well. So it's definitely good to see, because it's the only footage you have of William Gillette acting. You can find it online, you can get the DVD or Blu-ray, you can also find the digital copies of it, I'm sure, as well. But it's definitely cool to see. His career was going for quite a while, so his last stage performance was 1936. He performed in a play called Three Wise Fools, and he would have been about 82 or 83 at that point. So he kept on going for a while. His career spanned about 6 decades. Now, William Gillette was known as the Dean of the American Theater, and I think that reputation comes from a few different places. First of all, as I had mentioned before, theater was seen as a very lowbrow form of art, but William Gillette was this New England gentleman. He came from high-class society. His mother's family founded a state of Connecticut. His father was a senator. So having someone genuine like that, he and his peers helped to bring theater up as a higher form of art and bring some more prestige and respect to the field. He was also a genuine, kind, and decent person to anyone who knew him, and that included people he worked with in the theater. His career, like I said, spanned 6 decades, so over that time, he was able to influence a lot of people. Most notably, he helped Charlie Chaplin get his start in the early 1900s. Chaplin was cast as Billy the Page Boy in one of Gillette's productions of Sherlock Holmes. Later on, in 1918, an 18-year-old Helen Hayes worked with Gillette in a play called Dear Brutus, and he was very supportive of her. He helped mentor her as an actress. And of course, Helen Hayes went on to become the First Lady of the American Theater. Those were just a couple of examples. There were many other people that he helped. Part of Gillette's significance in the theater goes to his innovation. So when he was in the theater, he helped to popularize the idea of lights fading out and in between scenes. He also had actually 4 patents to his name for techniques and for devices used in the theater. He was also very big into transitioning theater from over-exaggerated melodrama to more realism, and that was extremely popular. It was very well received as a concept. William Gillette wrote about a concept that he developed called the illusion of the first time. So basically what he meant was that with a realistic form of acting, he wanted it to be where the audience could not tell that you had rehearsed these lines hundreds and hundreds of times. He wanted you to be able to see him as an actor and think that he was just making up the lines as he was going along, and that it was very natural, and that you couldn't tell it was something that had been rehearsed. Now, Gillette was obviously extremely successful in his theater career. He realized that you could do more than just one thing in the theater. So he starred in the plays, he also wrote the plays, and he also directed the plays. So he realized that a lot of the money came his way, and that helped him significantly from a financial aspect. Also, it helped him because he knew what kind of an actor he was. He succeeded in comedic farces and in dramas, but usually his strength, his range was limited to being the strong, silent type who was steady in the face of chaos. So you could compare him maybe to like a John Wayne or a Clint Eastwood type of character. So he made sure that when he was writing his plays that the lead characters in those plays were those types of people. And that helped him because he could play to his strengths. He was one of the most successful stage actors of his time. And just to give you an idea as far as what kind of money he was making, in 1899, his gross receipts totaled $310,000. Over the course of his career, he made about $4 million. Most of that came from Sherlock Holmes and from Secret Service. Between those two plays, he performed at 3,000 plus times, and even when he wasn't performing, he was still making money off the royalties. Again, the benefit of being a playwright. So that's basically what I have to tell you about today. Make sure that you like these videos, make sure that you post any comments or questions you might have, and make sure that you keep on sharing these videos with all your friends and family so that they can hear all these awesome stories, get all this great information about William Gillette and about the castle. So that's all I've got. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.